Welcome to Squirrel, the podcast for distracted writers, hosted by Candace J. Thomas and Jody L. Milner.
Jody, it's your episode.
You're right, it is.
You get to introduce this.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Squirrel Podcast. I'm Jody.
And I'm Candace.
And today we are talking about the pros and cons of being a pro at a con.
I love the wordplay there. I thought it was so funny.
You did brilliantly with that. I love that too. Okay, no matter what you're into, there's bound to be a conference or a convention that celebrates it, which is fantastic. Candy and I, we're both fantasy writers. We tend to go to a lot of the same conferences just because of that. We also go to a lot of writing conferences. Our favorite genre-friendly conference is the Salt Lake FanX Experience, which is actually coming up this weekend, which is fabulous.
When this airs, this will be this week for sure.
Attending these conferences as a professional is a hugely different experience than attending it as a consumer. And we would love to discuss what those differences are and how you can prepare for them as a way of helping you decide if a conference is right for you or if there are things that you should probably consider before going.
Well, if you're wanting to be an author, this is something you have to confront. You said if it's going to be for you, maybe it's not. I don't care if it's not. It's not for a lot of us, but it's still something you have to do. You have to confront as an author. You're going to have to do these conferences, specifically the writing conferences.
Absolutely.
Because you have to be that expert in what you're talking about. You have to get your name places. You have to network with people. You have to be there. It's just something you can't avoid. There you go.
It's true. And your author persona versus your private persona eventually end up kind of being different people.
Yeah.
Especially if you're more of an introvert. And no one would believe it, but I'm an introvert.
Yeah, I don't believe it.
I know Candy doesn't believe it, but it's very draining for me to go to conferences and do a lot of networking and a lot of talking. I get peopled out.
Yeah. And I did mention that in the notes that it is very exhausting.
It's very tiring.
Something we'll talk about once we get into the meat of it. So, yeah, I don't think. Have you ever done a con outside of our state?
I have not yet. I feel I need to achieve a certain level of material in my brand before I can justify spending that much time and effort and resources.
Yeah, because it's when you go outside, I have done cons outside of our state, and you just have to bring your resources there. So if you're doing specifically books, right, they're heavy, and you have to order them beforehand. And what if you don't sell all of them? Do you get into this desperate place where you have to start pitching them at the end of the con because you don't want to take it home? I mean, there's a lot of things to consider. Just your getting all of your materials there. What can you set up? What can you take? Here, our cons are easy because we're just driving a few, minutes away. I say minutes for me. It's probably longer for you, but I can bring in all of my banners, all of my bookmarks, all of my swag, all of my just even things from home.
Your totes and totes of stuff that
and
you end up using.
My squishy mats because my feet get so tired from standing all day. I mean, those are things, the luxuries that I have having a con close to us. When you're outside of the state, you don't have that. You don't have those kind of luxuries. So it's a lot bigger undertaking when you go outside. Just thinking about that makes me
I think we need to back up just a little bit because I think we need to encapsulate what it means to be a professional at one of these conferences versus the difference of being an attendee.
Okay.
So what are the top three things that a pro at a conference is going to end up doing?
You have to set up a base of where you're going to be, where people are going to be able to find you. Either that being a booth or a table or a signing or something like that. You also have to build your name for the conference. Is this where you're wanting to take this?
I was going to say, like, what would be your actual responsibilities if you are coming to a conference and you are actually working? What are some of the duties you might be doing? Because the first thing that comes to mind, like at this most recent conference that Candy and I attended, which was the Quills Conference, I was there as a teacher. So I was a workshop teacher and then individual presentation teacher. So I was there doing 6 hours of programming as a quote-unquote expert in the field, as a professional. And that was how I was demonstrating both my expertise and my brand to another group of writers. And I also really like giving it back because there's been amazing writers in my past that made all the difference in my writing. So I do like giving it back in the form of teaching.
Yeah. Teaching is, I enjoy teaching to a point, because I like discussing my expertise. I really like teaching. That's always been something that I felt good about, but it is stressful.
Especially if you're the only person up there giving the information.
Yeah.
You are on the spot. You are public speaking.
Yeah.
And that can be difficult.
And you have to learn you need to learn those skills. There are specific skills that in communication and like presentation that you need to figure out. In order to do a good presentation, you've got to do a lot of research. You've got to have all your sources. You've got to have a lot of material that's engaging. You have to be specific in the way you engage with other people. It's a lot. It's very stressful.
Everyone's been to a class where the teacher put them to sleep. You do not want to be that person. You want to be engaging, lively.
And you need to impress them because, not only are these your peers, but they also are a lot of the time, they're the ones that spread the word about you. And it's always about spreading the word about your books, about you being, a cool person, being the person that you want to approach at these places, being able also when in your networking, you want to be that person that people contact and say, I want you to come to this conference and teach at this place.
And the more you do it, the more you will make these amazing connections between other writers, other professionals. And if they know they can count on you for specific like subject materials that you're really good at discussing, that only can open more doors of opportunity for you. One of the other things you do at panels, one of the other things you do at conferences or conventions is you might be asked to be on a panel discussion. You want to give us a lowdown on how that works, Candy? Because I know you moderate panel discussions quite often.
Well, I do, but that is like if you're talking about FanX or those kind of conferences, there's a back door that you have to figure out how to get into in order to get your I don't know exactly how to answer this.
Well, let's talk about what is a panel for someone who might not have been to a conference before.
Honestly, it's it's being on the stage with 6 other people that are subject matter experts in what you're talking about. That's really it. Yeah. In the upcoming conference that's happening this Saturday, we are doing a panel called The Book Was Better. Now, I selected this one because I know books, I know screenwriting, and I know how adaptations can be really tricky. So I gathered a bunch of people that I felt were good experts in this field. And so we're all going to just be up there talking about it for an audience, and then we'll take questions. But we are the experts that are up there, right? And we need to be presented as those experts. So we really need to do a research and be impressive to other people so that they can come to us. It's always about coming back to us and coming back to our books so that they can find us later and buy all of our stuff and be our best friends.
Which is awesome. And at big conferences such as FanX, you might be in a room that has 400 or 500 different avid readers of genre fiction.
That's pressure
in your audience. And there is pressure there, but it's also I can make all these connections. If I hit, if I mention the things that they love, they're going to have this wonderful experience at hearing this panel. But hopefully, crossing fingers, they also might develop more of a respect for you as an author.
Yeah. We'll talk about The Witcher.
Oh yeah. We all have our weaknesses. That's one of mine.
We'll talk about The Witcher. So it takes a lot to just prepare for those bigger events when it comes to panels. I don't know. It's stressful.
So to be able to be involved as an expert, some of these conferences will have just a place you submit your name.
Yeah.
And you submit your credentials.
Open calls.
There'll be an open call and you say, this is me, this is what I can do, and this is why I'm good at it. And then they will get back to you saying you've been selected, or they'll come back and say, hey, thank you for your interest, maybe next year. They're always polite. It's never personal. There's only so many people they can put on programming.
Yeah.
And so you will need to do research on the con that you want to be part of and how they acquire their talent and their experts to do discussions, because everyone is just a little bit different. And sometimes it's a bit secret to be able to find it because they don't want to be overwhelmed with everybody and their dog. They want people who have been vetted by other people that they trust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Reason why I'm so deep in FanX is I've been there since day one. So, and that's because I've made a name for myself through that and through the community. And networking, I'm not going to stress that more. Networking with people at these conferences is super important because you get to meet the right people that will get you into the right places. And you just have to be there and be present and be,
and be willing to talk to literally anyone about anything at any given time. I've gotten to know people that I would never have had a chance to talk to just by sitting in the green room and just having a random discussion over lunch about any topic in particular. But when you make a meaningful contribution to their topic, all of a sudden they're like, I like you.
Yeah.
That's how these relationships are made. And it is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. I do love what happens in the green room.
And sometimes it's silly, and sometimes it's
I've
like,
met some
wow.
pretty amazing people.
Yeah.
In the green room. So.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
The award-winning Vivitera series from Candace J. Thomas is now in a collection. The Stones of Everstar explore the story of Naomi and her quest to find the 6 missing stones and the sisters who protect them. You can find this award-winning collection now at your favorite ebook hub or at CandaceJThomas.com.
So when should you consider trying to be part of a programming for a con? What is the general timeline that you should be looking at if you are interested in starting?
And programming, I'm going to suggest it's going to take a while. It's going to take a couple of years. I would not suggest immediately trying to get there, even though, let's say you're a brand new author, you have this amazing book and you're so excited about it. So you get a booth at one of these cons and you're trying to solicit. I mean, all of a sudden you're going to need to be this speaker for your book, and it's hard. But when you don't have a lot of, clout, you don't have a lot of resources to pull from, you only have that one book, it may not make you the expert on it because you're competing with so many other people that are experts and do have that deep-seated knowledge of stuff. So it does take, in my experience, it has taken years for me to get to where I am part of the programming and feel comfortable as part of it.
And should you already be deeply entrenched in the writing community and you feel that you've got enough of this experience and you've made a lot of networking and you already know quite a few people that are already involved, you still are going to want to be looking for those opportunities 8 to 10 months out from the start of that con date.
Yes.
Because they start early and they close things off quite early, because the sooner they can get all of that stuff pinned down, the better the con can run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you're trying to get into something like Gen Con or Dragon Con, you have to submit the day after it has ended. That's how competitive it is with those really big cons. And I mean, they do kind of cycle through some of the same people, but not every year. So you may not make it one year, but you might make it the next year. So it's always worth trying to get into these bigger cons.
Absolutely. Let's have a brief discussion about vendor tables. Just because this is nitty gritty.
Brief. I have a lot to say about this.
Let's be very, very judicious in how much we share about preparing for a vendor table.
Okay. This is probably the con part. As in the pros and the cons, having and manning a booth is very hard. So you have to think about, let's look at this list we created. Taxes, inventory, partnering with other people, the cost to benefit ratio, because some of these booths at bigger cons are very expensive. You have to think about staffing, because if you're going to be, you can't be there all the time. It's going to kill you. You have to take breaks. You have to eat. And even when you are part of the programming, you're going to need to be gone at other things during the day. So you've got to think about staffing well. You've also got to think about just the general sales of how you're going to collect that sale, and how you like having a Square store or Venmo or whatever. And when going back to partnering, when it comes to booths that I've run, I've partnered with very specific people, and it has to be people that the way I run a booth is it's not just selling your book, it's selling all the books. So I usually partner with people that have the same kind of books that are in the same, maybe found at the same place on Barnes & Noble, but not enough that they're going to be competitive with you, because you still have to have a specific voice in getting your books out, versus you also need to sell all the other people's books as well. So that's one of the things that I'm just going to mention this. This is not really a side topic, but there can be competitiveness among authors. And there was a year where I partnered with 11 other authors, so we could build this really big bookstore. And what I found out was people didn't know how to sell other people's books. They only knew how to sell their own. And so even though people would be saying, well, I'm looking for a fantasy book that is more adventurous, and then this author's like, well, you might like my historical romance. And I'm like, no, they might like my book. But she didn't know how to sell other people's books. She only knew how to sell her own, and she was panicking. Authors tend to panic when they don't sell. Here we've got a huge stack, and your clientele is the same among all of the people at the con. They're specific readers and they have specific needs, so you kind of need to tailor the books to what they want. And if somebody says, I don't like fantasy, then I'm going to say, maybe you like this historical romance. Oh yeah, I love that kind of read. That's what they need to be buying, not your stuff. Wow, I just rambled a bunch of information about booths, but that's kind of how I feel about running a booth. It's a lot to manage.
It is. It's managing a small store.
Oh yeah, it's a job.
It's a job.
Yeah. And another thing that I'll mention that you need to learn once you are published is how to sell your book. That's difficult, especially for, let's say, you're an introvert like Jody, and you have to come up with a specific way. And people are like, tell me about your book. And you're like, I'm going to let Candy
describe this book to you, because I'm awful at it. And I've done that a few times, because sometimes it's easier when it's not yours
As
to
authors,
sell it.
We are terrible at selling. We're not marketers.
And Candy and I have done this interchangeably, where we're tired about talking about our books, and sometimes it feels better to have your wingman do it.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I think you really like this. This magic system is amazing.
It takes that pressure away, and you can just kind of be like geeking out about somebody else's book, and sometimes that resonates really, really well.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I'm gonna ramble some more. Another thing that cons are is very overstimulating, as you mentioned, and I know that you have sensory problems, and there's a lot of people that show up at these cons, and it's very noisy, and it's a lot of peopling. How do you calm down from that? Do you have to take another day off, or?
I used to bring toys until someone told me I couldn't.
Who was that?
You.
I did.
I would bring.
Oh, yeah, you had your sticks.
I'd have my devil sticks. Sometimes I'd bring my juggling ball because it was something that would remove me from the immediacy of the situation and let me do something that was very stimmy with my hands.
If it's a stim, I could have let you do that. You
I know,
never
but you were
mentioned
in
that. I was like,
charge.
what? Why are you flipping these sticks around? I mean,
because it draws strangers to the booth.
Yeah, and that is not the way that I like to draw strangers to
no
the
circus
booth.
acts for you? Fine.
No.
I like to draw people to the booth by giving them candy. As in the sweet, not candy.
Not me, thank you. So, yeah, they're very overstimulating. You just need to prepare for that.
I need to take breaks, but literally the week afterwards, I can feel just this pent-up amount of anxiety
buzzing
that needs to slowly drain off afterwards. So I'm still recovering from the Quills Conference last weekend.
Yeah.
At the time of recording this, because that one there was a lot of emotional highs at that one. And so I still am kind of unwinding and dealing with the fallout of not being home for several days because it's still a bit of a disaster. I think we need to have a tiny discussion about swag.
Oh, yes.
Swag can be something you lose your mind over.
Right?
Swag can be very expensive, but the idea is leaving a token that is cool with someone who is interested in your stuff, so they see your name and your brand and your product in their everyday life, and they remember, oh yeah, I was going to pick up that person's book.
Yeah, it's always
that's the idea behind swag.
But swag can also, if you don't have a name, you're not going to sell stuff. Like the very first con I did, the Salt Lake Comic Con, I decided to do T-shirts, thinking that I love T-shirts. I am a T-shirt maker. And I thought for sure people would want T-shirts of my book. Why would I think that? I only had one book out. It had been out for 3 months. And nobody bought these shirts. Nobody. And I spent so much money and on stuff that I can't sell. I eventually just had to, I don't think I have any left, but we started to just donate them here or give them to this, whatever. And yeah, so there's probably some kids in Africa that have a shirt that has my book
good
on it.
swag. There's good swag and bad swag. So good swag, stickers, bookmarks.
Be very thoughtful.
Postcards that have snippets of text on them, type things that you can produce for pennies an item, if not less. And feel free to just generously give them to anyone who wants them.
People
That's
like
the idea
free
of swag.
things. And don't have anything that has a timestamp. Got to be really thoughtful about that. If you're once you rebrand, all of that stuff is garbage. If you put the year on it and you don't sell all of that stuff, then you can no longer use it. So something to very, very conscious, your swag needs to go and last you quite a bit. If you're going to invest, let's say, in enamel pins, which is great, and you can sell those, but you have to think about where are you going to sell all of these and what is going to be on them. So there you go. There's my swag stuff.
So our take-home message about being at cons, being part of these conferences and these Comic-Cons can be exhausting but very rewarding. There's nothing quite like meeting someone one year and then having them come back next year and telling them how much they like you. That makes a world of difference.
When they're looking for you, I'm like, do you
when
have
they're
the third
trying
book
to
out?
find you.
Yeah. You're going to have that.
And you will get that. It takes time. You have to build these relationships, but that's probably one of the most rewarding experiences you can have as an author.
For me, I want to say, like, being a part of a con is an incredible feeling. It just is. But being a panelist and special guest is extremely rewarding. It places you in a strange place, though, because all of a sudden your name is a brand and you've become this weird celebrity. So I want you to kind of be prepared for that kind of thing as well. When you launch your book, your name is now belongs to other people. And so they will talk about you and your books without you being present. So this happens, and when you meet people at cons, they become fans. You just be prepared. I mean, you say that, that's a rewarding feeling, but it also can be extremely dangerous. So you just got to be prepared for anything. And it is it's a surprising world that you get thrown into once you become an author and be public like that. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much for listening to the Squirrel Podcast for the Distracted Writer this week. Be sure to join us next week when we talk about none other than imagination and how it ties into none other than the Barbie movie.
I know. I'm so excited. We came up with this idea after we had seen Barbie. Now it's like a few months past, but that's okay. We're still going to focus on this because I think it has extremely important information that we're going to kind of throw at you. So stay tuned to that.
All right. If you liked what you listened to today, please like and subscribe, and we look forward to sharing more information with you next time.
Yes. See you later. Thank you for listening to the Squirrel Podcast for the Distracted Writer with Candace J. Thomas and Jody L. Milner. This episode was recorded at the Farmhouse Recording Studio. Please like and subscribe to our podcast for updates and new episodes, and find more information at our website, squirrelpodcast.com. Stay distracted, everyone. Like the best and worst advice.
I love how you've bled all over these.
That's what I do.
Okay, that's cool.
But this is Squirrel right here.
That is, yes. I think we should actually have that as an example.